Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, Galenband, an Irish medtech startup, is developing a wearable diagnostic device to help prevent strokes. The company's founder and managing director, Oisín McGrath, joins me now to tell us more. Oisín, start by providing us with an insight into your own career.
Thanks very much for having me. I am a biomedical engineer by study. I have 2 degrees, an undergraduate and a master's in biomedical engineering with a specific focus in cardiology. I managed a startup through my time at university that produced orthotic and orthopedic devices, and that allowed me to gain a bit of management experience and some of the early funding to start Galenband as well a few years ago. I also spent a little bit of time in process development at Aerogen, and all of that came together to put me in a good spot to start this company.
And it was a personal experience which triggered the idea for this business.
It was indeed. Yeah, I spent 13 years from the age of 5 to 18 trying to get a diagnosis for my own intermittently occurring heart problem. And I had 11 different monitors over that time period, and they all failed to catch the symptoms. And eventually I had to resort to surgery just to gain a diagnosis, and that's not an uncommon story. And that's what prompted me to study biomedical engineering, actually, and to find a better way to reliably detect symptoms that don't happen very often. And these are the ones that are normally very difficult to find with the conventional options that are available today.
So talk to me about the journey that you took to find a solution to it.
It started in my master's degree. I had been going through the undergraduate sort of writing papers and such on novel methods of detecting heart rhythm problems, but the master's degree was actually BioInnovate based. It was run by Professor Mark Bruzzy, who's a director and founder of BioInnovate, which is a needs-led innovation program. So essentially you shadow doctors, you learn what problems they face in everyday work. And what I found when I was shadowing cardiologists was the largest problem that they were facing was a lack of adequate options for detecting infrequently occurring heart rhythm problems. So it wasn't just me. That's when it became apparent that this is actually very common, and it wasn't just me.
And why had a methodology for detecting this been found previously?
Well, it's a long-standing issue with the intermittent symptoms specifically, because there are many types of heart rhythm abnormalities, some of which happen frequently or persistently, and they're not that challenging to detect. The monitoring options today are broad spectrum, so they try to address everything. So they're good at some things and some things not so much. They're not great at these intermittent symptoms because the recording durations are very short. So just an example, Holter monitors, which is the type of monitor you wear on your belt and attaches to your chest with lots of wires, that's used in 65% of cases today, but it only has a 1% detection rate for an intermittent arrhythmia like silent AFib, for example, that causes strokes. So despite the fact they're used very commonly, they're not great at detecting these silent problems.
So what is AFib and how does the Galenband detect it?
Well, AFib is an arrhythmia, which is a heart rhythm abnormality that is characterized by the upper chambers of your heart spasming. They're not contracting properly. And what happens then is that the blood in the chambers is not pushed out of those chambers correctly. It can stagnate, and any place that you have stagnant blood, a clot can form. So when the heart goes back into a normal rhythm, that blood is then ejected, and it can go straight to your brain and cause a stroke. So it's a very common cause of stroke. About 30% of all clot-related strokes are caused by AFib. And what we do to detect AFib is we've deployed our technology in an armband format that functions for about 3 months. It's a very small armband that you can wear and essentially forget about. There's no apps, there's no recharging or anything like that. So it's great for patients who are a little bit older or patients who've already had a stroke and don't want to have another stroke. They may not be able to interact with devices that exist today. So this is very much a simple set it and forget it type of device.
In what percentage of cases does somebody that has suffered from a stroke actually go through another one?
Well, it's actually 20%, and doctors often can't immediately tell what the cause of a stroke was. And this is the crux of the problem, I suppose, is that it's called cryptogenic stroke, where the doctor's not sure what caused it. They apply a Holter monitor, which is a 1% chance of detecting the problem in the first place, and they don't have a better tool than that. I mean, surgical options, they're generally quite good. The implants, the surgical implants. Galenband, we position it essentially as a non-implantable alternative, so a non-surgical alternative. We achieve similar detection rates to the implantables, but with no surgery at all.
So talk to us about the technology which underpins the business and the process involved in developing it.
Yeah, sure. Well, the core innovation here is the ability to gather diagnostic level data from just one arm. And our device, it's a prescription medical device in the form of, as I mentioned, a small armband worn on the upper left arm. It measures the activity of the heart continuously and transmits that data directly to us via mobile networks. So there's no apps or anything like that. Patients can go about their everyday life as if they're monitored 24/7, as if they're in a hospital bed, but they can go about their everyday life, and it functions for 90 days. Like I mentioned, you'll catch about 85% of AFib events within 90 days. So we're catching the vast majority of what's there. If it's required past that point, you can wear it again. It can be chained. They can chain them together.
And why is it prescription based?
Well, it's prescription-based mostly because devices like the Apple Watch and Fitbit devices, these are consumer gadgets. They're non-diagnostic. But what they do, we've heard from clinicians, is it puts into the hands of the worried well the ability to spam emails to the doctors. And the doctors are not big fans of this because the patients are, they're concerned about their health, but they're not qualified to interpret that data. So our system puts back into the hands of the clinicians the control for prescription. They're able to control the outflow of the devices. They know who needs them, and they know how to interpret the data. So this is essentially providing an accessible option to the doctor to provide to who needs it.
What is your route to market in that respect? Is it purely through the medics?
Yeah, for the moment, we're targeting exactly a prescription only. So we're engaged with quite a few different hospitals across the United States and over here in Ireland as well. We're interacting with clinicians to find out what works well for them from a prescription and data analytics workflow standpoint. But of course, asking a patient to wear a device for an extended period of time introduces compliance challenges. So we are conducting multiple human factors clinical studies to make sure the patients are comfortable. This device is intended to be basically forgotten about once it's on. So that's a very important element for us as well. But the route to market is indeed, interacting with the doctors, prescription only.
And how receptive have the doctors been to date?
Yeah, it's been a pretty resoundingly well-received proposal. Because, again, remembering that they actually don't have any options like this at the moment at all. So they're aware that the options they have are insufficient. This is known. So to be able to provide them with a device that does the same thing as a surgical implant without any surgery at all it's a pretty big game changer for them. And so we haven't received any feedback that would lead us to think we're on the wrong track here. I think this is definitely, we're onto a winner when it comes to preventing strokes, and clinicians are a big fan so far.
And as an early stage business, what has been the greatest learning that you've had to date?
Personally, I think it has been the team building experience for me. When you're in a regulated environment, you need a team who has done it before, or you need at least a few advisors who've done it before. I spent the early days focused on the tech. With my background being in engineering, I spent the early days focused on the tech, and the importance of the regulatory side was made apparent during the BioInnovate process. And, you can't do it all on your own. So I think the most important lesson I've learned is that start building the team early and make sure you've got all the competencies there. It's going to help you on the investment side of things. It's going to help you on the development side of things. So don't try to tackle it all by yourself, and don't spend too long doing that.
What is the data telling you in terms of the age profile of those that it's been prescribed for?
Yeah, the age. So the majority of the patients in the populations we're looking at are on the older side. AFib is very common indeed over 65. When you get into the over 80s, you're talking 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people. So it's important for us to consider their likelihood to engage with the device. So that's hence why we've engineered out all of the points of interaction aside from putting it on. So there's no apps, there's no recharging, there's no buttons to press. Excellent for the older populations, and definitely an important one for us to consider. But it's been a main focus for us over the entire development process. So we think we're in a good place with it.
Talk to us about the supports which Galenband has received to date and how they've benefited the business.
It's been developed thus far under a couple of Enterprise Ireland Commercialisation Fund grants. We've been working out of the University of Galway, and honestly, we wouldn't be where we are at all without the support of Enterprise Ireland in those grants. And I know many medtech businesses, especially in Ireland, have the same experience. They get their start with these Commercialisation Fund grants. They're not easy to get at all. They're well evaluated, and yeah, like I said, without them, we wouldn't be where we are. That's been the primary source of support so far. We did just win the Intertrade Ireland Seed Corn regional finals, and that provides us with an extra amount of funding. I would definitely advise, if there are early stage projects that are looking at potentially what could we do from a commercial standpoint, I definitely engage with Enterprise Ireland or your local enterprise office to talk about maybe a commercial case feasibility grant or a commercialization fund grant, just to discuss the potentials on that. It's been fantastic support for us.
And in terms of the technology itself, could this be applied to detect other health issues or disorders? And is it something that you're currently looking at?
Absolutely. So the atrial fibrillation side of things is a first point of market entry for us. This is a population that's well defined, it's well managed, and it's one that's very obviously underserved. So we feel like we can gain rapid traction if we target that population first. But this has broad application for many different types of heart rhythm abnormality. And maybe one example is a couple of conversations we have ongoing at the moment with a sports medicine hospital in Qatar to monitor athletes for heart problems that precede sudden cardiac death. So this is many applications in a variety of different heart rhythm abnormalities. We'll be looking at those more from the regulatory pathway after market entry, because we'll be gathering sufficient data to support these supplementary regulatory applications after that point.
And Oisín, what are your future growth plans for the business?
Well, we're going to focus on bringing it to market in the United States for this problem, the atrial fibrillation issue. We'll come back into Europe the year after 2028, starting with Germany, and then expand into additional territories, including Ireland thereafter. The European entries, it's a little bit more challenging nowadays with the introduction of the new medical device regulation a couple of years ago. So we need to spend more time on testing and compliance for CE marking, and that does take some time. But as a business, we've got to generate revenue as quickly as we can. So it makes sense for us to start with the United States from that perspective. And within 4 years, we're expecting to be delivering about 100,000 prescriptions a year. This is based on the growth rates of competitor companies. So it's going to be an interesting journey getting there. I think we're a well-capable team. We've got people who've done it before. And
was FDA approval required for this product?
Indeed, yeah, that's right. So that's going to be key. They're quite happy with our testing plan that we've laid out so far from a clinical standpoint. So I think the next step for us is to complete the clinical studies that we've got going on right now, and then we'll be able to make that 510K application, is what it's called. We'll be able to make that application to gain FDA clearance, and that'll be us ready for market entry in the US, essentially.
And finally, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey in the medtech space?
I'm not far off starting myself. I mean, I started maybe 3 years ago, so I think it's all fresh in my memory. So number one for me, it's got to be putting together a starting team that is, resolute, that has the skill set to carry this forward. Don't layer up two people with the same skill sets. I think it's important to take into consideration the engineering element, the regulatory element, but also you have to have a commercial person in there as well. That was me for this team, but not everybody's going to have somebody with the commercial experience. I think what people should do is probably engage with possibly investors early on to discuss what they would expect to see to consider a company investable. You could possibly build a team on the basis of that, because you can talk to investors at any point. You learn what they expect to see and build your team around that. Talking to Enterprise Ireland, local enterprise office, these are beneficial, and other people who've done it before. Just learn as much as you can before you commit, because you essentially, just to cap it off, what you want to do, you want to figure out why this is going to fail as fast as possible, so you don't waste your time. And if you continue down the pathway, you want to have the best chances. So.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Oisín McGrath from Galenband, and we wish them every success in cracking the US market with their wearable diagnostic device.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.